Here. So we're a come here, but that doesn't mean that we're less dedicated to it. I think that one of the things that we as Democrats do well is we are neighbors first, right? Whether that's somebody who needs a ride to the doctor, or someone who is going through a hard time and you put a little extra grocery money in their hand, or you show up with some, oh my fault! Or you show up with some of the vegetables from your garden that you can't eat so that they can have that. We know what it's like to show up for each other, whether it's as a CASA advocate, as Cindy was talking about, someone who volunteers for the food bank, folks who take care of their own parents and children at the same time. We are about being neighbors first. And I think that is how we are going to win back the folks that we lost in 2020 and 2024. And is how we are going to come back to who we are as Americans and as Virginians. Our 62nd district here, some of you have probably heard, a little bit of craziness last couple of weeks. So I'm a little excited. Exciting's one word for it. So my former opponent, our current delegate, announced at the very, very, very last minute he possibly could that he was not going to run for re-election.
Yay!
And he magnanimously handed the mantle over to an inexperienced wife of a politician who was going to take over his seat as delegate and put all of his support behind her. Luckily, democracy prevailed, and in the 5 days that were left of the filing period, gentleman from here in Madison, the Board of Supervisors, put his signatures in and was able to get on the ballot. So now we have not one but two opponents to sort of strategize and work towards. And what this really is going to be a primary preview for the rift in the Republican Party.
Yes.
Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about the Republicans because I don't think that's helpful for us. But the idea that the MAGA and, I won't say his name, 47-led people are going to fight against the traditional conservative, George Bush, compassionate conservatives, if you will, that is the rift that's going to happen. And we as Democrats know a little bit about compassion, so we need to show up in the way that we know how to. We need to talk about the good things that we want to do and that we want to protect and that we want to preserve, not just the consequences that 47's policies are going to have. And I want to talk about this in a way that's an acronym: HELP. Healthcare, economics, liberties, and people. So under, access to healthcare in our community, whether it's the healthcare desert, whether it's maternal healthcare that's really difficult to get to and we have to drive for hours and hours to get some of the specialized care that we need. In our community, healthcare is absolutely under attack. The consequences of that and these policies are if Medicaid is cut as we expect, and Virginia's trigger law will mean that 600,000 people who were expanded to Medicaid under the Medicaid expansion by the Democratic House will be likely thrown off, if not completely cut off from Medicaid. That's the consequence. What can we do about it? When you send me to Richmond, we will make sure to repeal that trigger law so that we can make use of the extra folks on Medicaid.
Yes.
For economics, under Biden, we were starting to come back. It wasn't happening fast enough. People weren't feeling it closely enough, but we were doing it. The infrastructure law, the CHIPS Act, many of these policies are starting to show fruit. And interestingly, the Republicans are taking credit for all of this projects. We need to make sure that in Virginia, we are doubling down on the policies and the expansion of that infrastructure to bring back the middle class and ensure that our economy is as strong as it is. 47's trade war and the cuts to things like Social Security, as well as all of the disastrous effects of federal workers and contractors and everyone else, veterans, is going to be what we have to fight against. Here in the Commonwealth, we can fight against that by making sure that we ensure the benefits are available and that folks who work for the federal government, which is a large part of the Virginia infrastructure and economic stability, that those folks are protected and not just sent to Indeed or LinkedIn, as Ashley said. Liberties is an important one. The right to vote, the right to due process,
Yes.
the right to bodily autonomy.
Yes.
The idea that true religious freedom is not to have freedom of any kind, religion of any kind imposed upon you by the government.
Yes.
These are the fundamentals of civil liberties that our country was fought and built on. Unfortunately, the SAFE Act, cutting voting rights for millions, including married women across this country, the deportations and disregard for the courts that we're seeing out of the federal government, the federal ban on not just abortion, which is supposedly working its way through the committees at the moment, but also on contraception or IVF.
Right.
And Project 2025 and the rise of Christian nationalism are threatening these fundamental civil liberties. What can we do? In Virginia, we are, as many of you know, the safe haven, the line in the sand in the South for bodily autonomy and the right to make your own decisions about pregnancy and your reproduction. We need to keep that true and we need to keep that real so that whatever happens in the future, that is safe. The way to do that is a constitutional amendment. We're one step in a 5-step process. We need to make sure to deepen the majority in the House so we can pass that bill again and the voters in 2026 can vote on it.
Yes.
As well as making sure that our elections are safe and that religious freedom continues to be the bedrock that we hear. Thomas Jefferson, James Madison. We have a lot of folks here who started this country. We're going to make sure that we keep that history alive in the Commonwealth. And the last of the HELP acronyms is people. Who we are as Americans, as Virginians. How do we get back to that? How do we get back the real effects of federal workers being cut? My husband, as many of you know, is a federal worker. He works for the Office of Personnel Management, and we have had lots and lots and lots of hard nights as we figure out what's going to happen next. We are lucky. We are going to be okay because of his status. But many of his teammates, many of the people that he's trained, many of the people that he's worked with are not in the same case. It is a daily onslaught of stress and concern. And the administration doesn't seem to care much. Whether it's veterans, immigrants, anyone who disagrees, how do we fix that? We need to band together. We need to speak out. We need to protect each other so that we are in numbers too big to ignore or retaliate against. We each have a duty to protect those ideals and those values that we hold dear. We need to launch fierce opposition.
Yes.
However we are able. If all you can and want and are able to do is write a letter to the editor, write one every week. They may not always go in, but some of them will get in. From writing letters all the way up to running for office, whether it's local, state, or federal office. We need everyone, all hands to the wheel in whatever way you are able. We need to speak out, we need to show up for our community, we stand up for others. We need to have fortitude, the courage, the conviction, the fierceness to endure and to maybe inspire others. And that is the part I want to talk to you about tonight, particularly, because in addition to fighting back and being that voice of opposition, we also need to remember who we are. Compassion is an extraordinarily personal value for me. I think our empathy and compassion is what makes us who we are. It makes us the community that we are, community of Democrats, communities of the Piedmont, community of Virginians. Not just for those who need our help, but maybe for those who regret where we've come to and how we got here. I spent my life sort of split in two. My parents were divorced, I shuttled between their households. My mom had very little, my dad was fairly successful. I would go from poverty to privilege every vacation. From health and safety and the security of a traditional family to mental health crises and hospitalizations and back again. I spent my career trying to make sure I stood up for personal values while also dealing with the political realities. And sometimes you have to make some compromises that you might not always want to make to get things done. And as hard as it was, what it taught me was to be comfortable in any room, with anybody, from any walk of life. My husband jokes that I would talk to a fence post if they let me. So I encourage all of you to take a page from that book. I believe we need to show compassion to those who don't agree with us. Not retaliation, not remorse, excuse me, not telling them how wrong they are, or stupid they are, or how it's their fault we're in this. We need to make space and have grace for the people who are sorry they voted for him. We need to make space and have grace for the people who didn't or don't vote. I was at the grocery store, and it's after a day of canvassing. I was looking like a wreck, I'm sure. I had my t-shirt and my button and my literature and my canvas, and I went to the grocery store quick to get a few things before I went home for dinner. And the checker was like, what's all that about? That's a lot of stuff you got on there. I was like, oh, I'm running for office. He's like, oh. So you want to go to Congress? I'm like, no, I'm actually running for the state this year. And I kind of explained the whole thing. I said, yeah, so I hope you'll consider voting for me. He's like, oh, I don't know. That's not for me, you know. It's not my thing. I'm like, well, do you care about what school you went to and whether or not it has the books it needs and the teachers are paid well? So, well, yeah. Do you care about whether you can find a job? Do you care about, and I listed about 5 or 6 things. And he's like, well, yeah, I care about all those things. I'm like, well, you know who represents you in Richmond or in Washington? It's like, well, there. No. Well, if you voted, you would. So I hope you will consider voting, and when you do, I hope you'll consider voting for me. And we had this little conversation in line, and by the time we were done, the people, the checker and the sign next to us, and got behind me in line, and everybody was in it. They're like, you gotta vote, man! So we need to show compassion and empathy and engage those people who don't vote or didn't vote in conversation. We need to reach out to the disillusioned who are voter remorse for 2024 and say, not, ugh, I can't believe you voted for him. No, and say, are you happy with it? You know, I feel you. I do. I'm really scared, and maybe we could talk about some of the ways that we think we're going to try to take it back. Because he's gone too far, and we want to make sure that you have room to come to a place where we can come together, right? Have those conversations. And of course, the folks who are scared to speak out or to admit who they voted for or whatever. You don't have to have a conversation about him to have a conversation about where we go next.
Yes, yes.
I just came from the Rural Caucus Retreat down in Natural Bridge. There's very exciting things happening. And one of the speakers there was saying, we need to not talk so much about our current president or the Republicans in general. The best advertisement for his candidacy at all is the National Democrats. We need to stop talking about them and start talking about what we want to do and how we can bring people back. We need to stay true to our values of compassion, authenticity, and the reality of people's lives and how we want to help them and what we want to do about it. And the way we do that is we tell the stories of the people we know. We ask the neighbors that we don't know what they think, what they want, what they need, and then we tell that story to the next person we talk to. And we ask what and why people think what they do or believe how they do before we give them recriminations for that. These are the ways that I think we can stay true as Democrats. This is the way I think I can represent my core value of compassion, and I think it is the way that we will win back the House of Representatives.
Yes.
We will win back the governorship of Virginia, and we will deepen, with your help, I will go and deepen the majority in Richmond, and we will bring back compassion to Democratic politics.